Good afternoon, viewers. Thank you. We are sorry. We had the technical breakdowns in our systems in satellite transmission, but we are back online. We want to complete this segment of Africa Watch. Africa Watch is one of the shows that we look at the continent of Africa. What has changed? From 1957, when Ghana got independence, lots of things have changed. There came democracy, respect for rule of law. Then late in the 60s and the early 70s, military coups came in. Idi Amin started overthrowing in Uganda. In Ghana itself, 1965, Kwame Nkrumah was thrown out. In Nigeria, General Aronzi, 1968, took down the prime minister. A war sprang up. Yes, we moved on. Look at all Burkina Faso, Sankara, Tubman in Liberia. Tubman was killed by Sergeant Two, assassinated, murdered across in Gambia. Sadawala was removed by a military. He never came back to life, to power. We move in Cote d'Ivoire, Bonje, somebody, the president there, very interesting, Felix Bonje. I don't know how to pronounce this medium. I don't know whether medium is studying French or German. German, yes. You are very interested in German language. Was thrown out. Mobutu Sese Seko throws out Patrice Lumumba and Tumbe. Look at African history. I'm just talking about it in my head. And Gaddafi throws King Idris, stabilizes Libya, brings Libya to the fore, up to the level of Libya that we want, the Africa that we want. Was killed, assassinated, finished. That country went. Nimeri, General Jaffa Nimeri, comes back to power twice, removing Prime Minister Ali Made in Khartoum. That's what are all people. The only country in Africa that has survived a military coup, that has not had a military coup, Kenya and Tanzania. But the rest have had, some have had attempted, very dangerous. The only thing Kenya had was attempted. Tanzania also had an attempted coup where soldiers, Zambia had a terrible attempted coup. I don't know why my video is shaking again. Is it shaking your side? It had a military attempted coups. Those are countries on the African continent. Look at, again, it is shaking. Let me continue without the shaking. I don't know why it is shaking, but that is what it is, life is. So, in a nutshell, Miriam and my friends Wesonga and Wesonga, Africa has learned something from a democratic dispensation, but we have not yet reached a level of democratization to the level that we have a free and a fair election where the loser congratulates the winner and we move on. Very few countries in Africa are doing so. Everybody goes to a certain stage, a second after elections. Another stage must be completed before the swearing-in ceremony of the president or presidents in Africa. Miriam, back to you in the studio to tell us the negative side. We have been talking about the rose, very good side of Africa. What about the negative side where human rights also one of the countries that we have Lesotho does not have political. Eswatini or Eswatini.
Eswatini.
Eswati or the Tswani Empire. They have political prisoners. Those who criticize the king several times have been thrown in and out, and they're beaten a few slaps, then told to go back. Tell us more, Miriam, about our story in East Africa. There are people who are beaten, and on the condition they are not killed, but left to roam the streets. Back to you in the studio in Nairobi.
Right. Thank you for that. Now, from the conversation that we've had so far before we had that interruption, and we apologize for that, it was clear that perhaps how democracy is being applied in the continent, I think Daniel Wasonga said democracy is used as a decoy, and Wanda has reiterated even before that democracy in the context in which it has been introduced is not it does not really work in tandem. It is not an African democracy, so we are forced to from the conversation we've been having, would you say, Wanda, that perhaps democracy is a dangerous concept because of how we choose to apply it here in the continent?
Yeah, it is very dangerous. Democracy in itself is okay. And I've made to believe that Africa was a democracy even before the Western democracy was introduced. What the Western democracy introduced was a limited democracy. It limited our thinking, our mindset to believe that democracy is free, fair, verifiable, and timely elections, which is not true. That when you look into, I was happy hearing you read out the principles of democracy. That the principle of democracy, for as long as there is equality and equity, then that is, to me, that is one of the very best. I'll take a case of Kenya, for instance. Then I look into the less populated regions and the highly populated regions. Because of the Western kind of democracy that we embraced, the least populated regions are always forgotten when it comes to the economic empowerment now. That we'll always have a discussion on, we will vote for you because you'll come and do our tarmac roads. We'll vote for you because we'll get 1 or 2, 3 ministerial positions. That is, to me, the dangers that comes with the kind of democracy and the kind of thinking that we ended up embracing when it comes to the democracy. But if we embraced democracy the way it was, and the former democracy that we had, that for as long as the leadership promotes the principles of democracy, then that's okay. For as long as, for instance, look at that simple terms, these two principles, equity and equality. That equity, you promote all the aspects that ensures equality. Then the equality, you're now looking into probably the economic aspect. You're looking into representation in the whole structure. That if we probably promoted the two, then ignore that aspect of now voting, then chances are equity in the sense of development. We could be having tarmac roads cut across. We could be having electricity cut across. We could be having farms, these are industries cut across, because there is equity and there is equality. But when we now embrace this democracy and narrow down to elections, then we'll always introduce people running to populated areas, then forgetting the less populated areas. And therefore, it is very dangerous, unless we embrace the full definition and explanation of democracy. And probably the crafters of our systems of education should look into the details of democracy and start teaching people the real democracy, it will probably open so many people's eyes. Then they will start looking at leadership, looking at how we get leaders, then promote the actual democracy, which we had, then lost when we picked this democracy that defines or limits our understanding of democracy to mean elections that comes on a termly basis. Miriam.
Okay, thank you. And I see we've been joined by Paul Onyango. Paul, a very good afternoon to you. Paul, can you hear me? Okay, so I thought you had joined, but that's okay. Daniel Wasonga, is democracy then a dangerous concept for the continent, seeing all these things that perhaps sometimes are done in the name of democracy, and we fail short when you just go through the ideals and the principles and the tenets of democracy? So many countries in this continent will not really even be halfway that list that makes up a democratic state. And the fact that we're not able to embrace fully democracy the way perhaps it should be embraced, then perhaps that makes it a dangerous concept for this continent.
Thank you so much, Miriam. And to answer this question, I really want to use the analogy of medicine. You realize that the board that controls the medicine is called, I think, the pharmaceuticals, I think of medicines and poisons board. And it really means that, in as much as if medicine is used in the right way, it actually heals an ailment. But also, when it is used in the wrong way, it actually becomes a poison. And that is the same way with the democracy. If we can actually prescribe democracy to our societies and it becomes compatible with them, it is used in the right ways, it becomes a means to get proper leadership of accountability and progressive leadership, then it serves as a people. But if we use democracy to satisfy our own vanities and our own selfish interests, then it becomes so dangerous. And more so, there's no any other continent that has suffered this tragedy of democracy being misused more than the African continent. I'll tell you for a fact, Miriam, whenever we have elections in Africa, more so sub-Saharan Africa, there is always more than 60 or 70% chances that we're going to be having electoral violence. Why is it so? It is because we've not taken time to understand how democracy works. And no one has put it much better than my good brother, Professor Wanda Wesonga, and Dr. Masanga David, who has been talking about democracy in Africa and the reason why we either need to have a hybrid system of leadership or all the same do away with democracy. It is because we as the African people took this system of leadership from the West and we try to put it in our own structures without really understanding the deeper functionalities and the implications of having such a system. You see, in the US today, it doesn't matter who takes the reins of leadership of the country. You'll never see people going, to sabotage the leadership of the day. You'll never see protests within the government, goslos in the government itself, because they understand that elections come and go. And once someone has the mandate under the Constitution, actually the rightfully elected leaders. And therefore, you'll never see even the military indulging in things that will actually undermine the Constitution, like coup d'etats. But in Africa, when an unpopular candidate is the presidency, next morning, perhaps you will hear news of the military having overturned that leader. It has happened in Nigeria, it has happened in Ghana, it has happened in so many African countries. And this is because as Africa, we are yet to align ourselves with the ideals of the Western democratic kind of leadership. And therefore, I think, Miriam, this is a system that Africa should put under evaluation, whether it is working for us or not. You can see, for example, countries like China, where they try to introduce this democracy. You can look at countries, even in the Middle East, where they tried to introduce democracy through the British, the British colonialists. But these countries, to some extent, were able to reevaluate this system of leadership and look at where they were when they were self-governing themselves with their own systems. And actually, they came to the point of conclusion that this system could not entirely be the solution to their leadership. And therefore, they found a middle ground of incorporating, some actually found a middle ground of incorporating democracy and their own olden system of leadership, and others actually did away completely with the democratic structures. And therefore, to me, I think Africa has wasted a lot of time trying to put up remedies that do not actually go well with our cultural basis. And therefore, to me, democracy, the Western democracy, does not really fit in the African society. It is not a plug and play thing. Rather, this is something that should be recalibrated to ensure that it captures even our social, political, and economical background from our societal virtues and where we come from as a people. And that is why, Miriam, not considering that is actually the reason why Africa has never experienced tranquility when it comes to leadership, because people are always fighting, to be into power without really understanding what are the measures, what are the requirements that maybe that someone should stay in power. Because immediately after one person gets the leadership mandate, another person is actually scheming on how to get them out of the office without really following the laid down rules. So to me, I believe, Miriam, we cannot have this democracy if you are not abiding by its rules. And if it is difficult for us to abide by these rules, then let us find an alternative mechanism of leadership that will ensure that we don't waste a lot of time politicking, we don't waste a lot of time fighting one another, but we use this valuable time to actually be able to build our society. I submit.
Okay, very well. Thank you so much. Doc, even as you come to give perhaps the takeaway of the issue of coups and military takeovers have been very rampant now, and is a growing trend that is worrying in this continent. And so this military opportunism, others have come in for good reasons, but others, like we've seen in the recent coups that have happened in Guinea, Burkina Faso, Mali, these soldiers are not really interested in going back to the barracks. They tend to believe that perhaps they're better placed in taking care of these countries. So they came in the pretense that they were helping in removing some of these leaders that the civilians were protesting against. But after they got into power, they're not in a hurry to leave. So this military opportunism that you're seeing growing in this continent, is it a threat on the democratic space? And is it something that we should start treating with the seriousness it deserves as far as democratic development in Africa is concerned?
Miriam, what did you call them?
The military opportunism.
No. There's no military opportunism here.
It is.
It depends from one country to the other.
Yes, because initially they came in to try to help, to remove these leaders that the civilians wanted to be removed. But after they did that, they're not in a hurry to leave now. They want to stay in power, so they took advantage and they're opportunistic.
Okay. The one in Mali.
Yes.
The one in Mali, I give them 100 marks. Fully, stay there. Don't leave. Why? And I don't see why. No, honestly, in Mali, the younger men there have stated their conditions very clearly. They have said, one, we want to teach the people of Mali what democracy is. Because in Africa, elections have become a stepping stone towards hell. Every African African country. We have now 9 countries. And Miriam, you are not speaking about this. You say we have to end it now. 9 countries going under the banner of elections. And each of them are breathing fire. You say, look at my country, Zimbabwe. The fire coming from Zimbabwe is worse than the fire Satan or God has set in hell. You know, we are even preparing bunkers. When you see Mr. Chamisa telling you that you saw the headline, what is the headline that coming from there? Read that headline of Zimbabwe. There is one headline you read there. Very interesting. The bunker, the type of elections that are conducted in Africa. Africans don't know what elections are. You can take me to hell or heaven and crucify me in front of God. But I will say the truth. We Africans don't know what elections are. So for me, Dr. David Matsanga, I would advocate for a non-contestable elections if I gave a grab power. If I get power anywhere in Africa, I don't know, Miriam, if you pray for me, one day I get somewhere. The thing to stop is elections. I go back to the roots of what Wanda was talking about. I go back and study. Miriam, why I'm talking like this is China. Look at China. China 40 years ago had a very brutal system of Mao Zedong. That when you yawn, you must seek permission to yawn. Just to yawn. If you want to go to the toilet, you must ask for permission from the village LC man, commander of the village, to say you are leaving for toilet. It's true. You want to have some relationship with your wife, you must seek permission, a letter from the Chinese Communist Party to sleep in the same bed with your wife. Are you with me on that one? I'm not saying anything about sleep. You can sleep without any action. That is different. I'm not, but if you make a mistake and produce a child, and that child is a boy, you are done. You know what they used to do them? They used to kill them. And then you go to prison for having had a right of your God-given right that a plant will produce another plant once there is irrigation and water. Mr. Wanda, as a historian, knows. Plants, anybody, if you put a female plant and a male plant, there will be production. Chinese wanted to kill people. They were killing people. Now, when 40 years passed ago, China had one rice scheme. I always use this example. One rice scheme in Africa called Kibimba Rice Scheme. Check your records. Kibimba Rice Scheme used to feed Chinese, who then were about 500 million people. We used to share that rice with Ugandans. We Ugandans used to share the rice with Chinese. They would load the Chinese, the rice in a train, East African Railway, up to Mombasa. By then, the railway used to go up to Bugiri, Jinja, Magamaga, Busagari, Kamuli, Kisumu, and here the rail lands. The other one passes through Malaba, Eldoret, Nakuru, up to Mombasa. The Chinese, therefore, devised a method to say, now we have been there, we have been growing so, we have been talking about dictatorial tendencies. We cut people who produce men. We lock them. Women who produce boys are killed. We have to change. The word I'm looking for, all of you, which you must take change. Is Africa prepared to change? Why should soldiers be opportunistic? Why? Maybe you can't accuse them of being opportunistic when you have not looked at the side issues of Konde, who cannot zip his trouser. You saw Konde was arrested with a trouser not zipped because he was running away. You have seen elections in Mali. They are rigged. You have seen elections in Guinea-Bissau. They were rigged. You have seen elections in Rwanda. 99.9%. Yeah. Voted the Oral Assembly. Oh my God. Hello. Hey, hello. Yes, we are talking here. We are together. Are we together? Let me be Bishop Masinde. Are we together? How do you get 99.90% of the vote? Are you a miracle, Jesus Christ? Are you a Jesus Christ? Kagame gets 99%. Is that the Africa we want? There was no court. You can't go to court. Which court will you go to? So if the military comes in Zimbabwe, in Rwanda, will you call them opportunistic? Nikapatie ka answer hapo.
It depends.
Is it opportunistic?
In Zimbabwe, the military removed President Mugabe and they went
I'm
back.
coming.
They went back to
I'm
the
coming.
barracks and they had elections. We have now Mnangagwa.
That's it. But in Mali, it has been,
Opportunistic.
elections have been the cause, the main cause. In Sudan, you see the General Duglo flew in Kenya where you were, trying to seek alternative for them to be readmitted in African Union. How many times have I been telling them before even coming, flying anywhere? You know, you know what? I've been telling Miriam how many times? From last year, 2021, you and I were holding conferences on Africa. While we were in Mombasa, in Saroba with you, in the conference, the whole team, we hosted a Sudanese doctor friend, Mohammed Eledi, who was the head of the entire anti-military situation. That lady told us that it won't be long. This situation is very bad, David. He told me, and I said, I don't take your number and tell you more. I went on paper and I wrote silently. I told them, if you, as long as the ICC question stands on Sudan, there will be military coups for a long time. I want to tell you that those who think they know more can do it. But Matanga, wash the feet, rub the dust, and God will judge you later. Who was the commander in Darfur? General Burhan and Dugro. Bashir did not go to Darfur. Bashir was commanding. Yes, he went to Darfur. But who were the commanders? It is you. So hand over the commander, then you will hand over yourselves. Don't you see the sequence? Hand over the commander whom you have accused, then you hand over yourselves. Because all what Mr. Bashir needs to say, that yes, I'm now here, but don't take me alone, bring my commanders whom I gave the job, who slept on the job. So we go together. And who was the man sleeping off the job? The Army General, Chief of Staff, Burhan, and Dagulo. My friend Dagulo was a commander in Janjaweed who was killing people. When you tell these people, enough is enough for me. For now, it is hands, bare knuckles. Bring it on, I bring on. Haki ya Mungu, that's the decision I've taken. If you bring it on and it is right, we shall work. But it's people who are told and they don't listen. Me, I have no room for that compliance anymore. Chomeka, that AU should admit them in the African Union. Who can admit you? You refuse to change the charter. The AU charter can only be changed by Dr. Matsanga. If you elect Dr. Matsanga in 2024, if you elect me as the chairperson, because I'm going, my resume, my application, my everything is going to be online officially. And I'm asking President Museveni to support my candidature. I want to change Africa. I want to change Africa. I want an Africa, an organization that can look in American eyes and say, hello, we are not interested in Mr. Johnny Casper. That is the agenda. I swear, in these African states, I will get at least 4 votes. Let's go on the ballot. Let's go on the ballot. I swear, in these African states, I will get votes. Your Excellency President Museveni, I'm not interested in your leadership. I'm interested in African Union leadership. Today, Sunday, 15th January 2023. Sir, I've now told you, don't get worried about me, because I'm beyond that space. My space is Pan-Africanism. I want to build a better Pan-Africanism, Mr. President. Support my candidature. I've read the books that Dr. Muhammad Faki has read. Has he read better than me? Does he even know English better than me? Does he know English? He knows only French. And sells our organization. He has sold our organization. He has sold our organization. African Union Medium has no say. You can imagine, how can a whole set of state come to somewhere, listen first, look here, la 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 la. A whole head of state who has a charter of AU asked for, you are still in power as a military, and you ask for you to be readmitted. Have you done a transition? The whole thing for me, this is what I told the ones in Zimbabwe here. You are playing with Mugabe. Mugabe is the head of state. Inside, you have arrested him. You have put him under house arrest. You continue detaining him there. People will come and release him and swear, tell him that now arrest the people. You don't do things that way. Now today they say we have taken over power. This time, no. Please, Miriam, look at my eyes. I've spelled my vision very clearly. I'm going to spell my vision. I'm not interested in the leadership of any country. I'm interested in the leadership of Africa Union. I want that slot of Dr. Muhammad Faki from where? From Chad. You give me, I'll run Africa administratively, change the policy, change Africa, make Africa answerable, make Africa a better place, stop some of our minerals being sold to people, protect African continent from external dark forces of Johnny Carson's and a group who want to give us conditions and stake conditions on the funds that they are bringing to us in Africa. Miriam, as I speak to you right now, I want you to tell me whether that money that Joe Biden promised will arrive here in this year. Are we together? Today I'm preaching, and I remember my Matthew chapter 10, verse 14. Remember that. An African hearing me, Matanga is on that course. I'm using the Bible. I've read the Bible for 45 years. Since I was confirmed as a Christian, able to understand why Jesus was born in December, then killed in April. What is the use of this? Are you not? How many years are those? How did we used to count years? Have you seen the fallacy? One of the fallacies that the East, the West brings to us are those films you see. Have you not seen Miriam where we are fooled like fools? You see Africans Googling themselves on film. I want to watch my film. In fact, he can hit the child for having changed the remote control. I'm watching the film. Fiction. Do you know I'd rather watch a Nigerian movie? Because Nigeria is equal juju. It is here. It can blow you. But this one of Hollywood, oh my God. We are blinded. We are blinded, Miriam, by certain things. I'm beginning to think about them. One of the things that corrupted us Africans are those films from Hollywood. Someone goes to practice fiction and comes to sell and takes our money. Africa needs to change. The AU has a problem. That's why if you call those soldiers opportunistic, yes, there are some who are opportunistic, but the people, those who are in Mali are not. Those who are in Mali are doing something which is very good. They are saying we shall hand over power after we have educated classes. People know what democracy is. Because you can't install a president today, civilian president, tomorrow you throw him out, another one throws the other one out. No, because people, let me ask you another question. If you say opportunistic, Nigeria, the other election had 84 million voters. If you say democracy is what we want, on the 28 million voters in Nigeria turned up to vote for Buhari. 56 million voters in Nigeria. Miriam Ogutu stayed at home. Kenya had 21 million voters. 11.2 million voters voted in the election, including stray ballots, what? Everything was added there. 9 million, wonder, you are Kenyans, tell me, where did they go? If you say there is democracy is sweet, let's go. Uganda across there. Uganda had 17 million voters. How many people voted? Only 9 million. Are you with me? Are we together? 9 million. Where President Museveni got about 6 point something million, and the other guy, the guitar man, got some things. The musician will be on my coronation day. will play music for the Wesonga, why are you laughing? Look, how many? Tanzania is the same pattern. Zimbabwe had 9 million voters. Only 5.6 million voted. The rest, 4 point something, disappeared. Where did they go? Twende mbele, songa tusonge. Yeah, angalia, it is there. Now, you tell me, Nigeria is going to pause next month, 24th. They have 121 million voters. I want to tell you, only 20 million will turn up to vote. Then you tell me there is democracy here. Where is it? People are not interested. So we must go back. The point I'm making here, Miriam, let's go back to stop military coming in and taking power. Let's go back and find, like a Chinese. They went back to China, found the root cause. After the death of Mao Zedong, there came a clique of the five, the communist five, who did not want McDonald's to be eaten in Beijing, who did not want the Kingfisher, King Burger, KFC. What else is done anywhere? What is drunk here? Nescafe. What else? They didn't want that. This other one who came to power said, no. Allow them piecemeal, slowly by slowly. Where is China today? Where is China today? Give me an answer on that. Are we together?
Yeah, China was able to grow very fast when they changed their structure and their styles of leadership.
That's the point I'm making, Miriam. Africa needs to change. Is the democracy working? The countries that are telling us to be democratized have spent 1,966 years killing people. Yeah. Have you heard of a Uganda, and I will translate it for you. Ensi egula emirambo. You can hear from the word mirambo means a bad thing. Ensi egula mirambo. The earth is made of dead bodies. You tell me in the island of Britain here, how many people died before we get that parliament? How many wars? We come here, we go to the museum and see the wars. Some of them were using crude weapons to kill each other. The films we see here made, those were British wars before democracy settled in the island of Britain. 1,961 years. For us, we have not even, Uganda, for my country, has not even done 62. One man has taken 37 years. Miriam's friend, 37. So on that one, listen here. Have I done a wrong thing? Since this space is occupied, wonder, is it a bad thing to ask for another one? Mr. Wanda and Miriam and Wesonga Daniel. Wesonga, speak for me. Daniel Wesonga.
I agree with you, Dr. Masanga David, 100%.
Yeah, the space here is gone. There is no vacancy in Uganda for presidents. Did you hear that? Come 2025, is it 26, when we are going to hold the elections, His Excellency the President has already been nominated today. So there is no vacancy there. So what I'm asking for me, I've gone ahead to Jerusalem. Ahead, bring me a donkey. Me naenda African Union. I want to battle it with Mr. Dr. Mohamed Faki from Chad. His term of office is ending. So I am a candidate. Kama Kenya mnaleta candidate, na mimi niko candidate. Mjue hiyo. And I'm asking my government, my people, my president to support me. To change African Union for the sake of a good African Union. We can't all look, the war in, have you seen this one coming? Look at this one coming. Do you know that the African Union chairperson traveled to Ukraine on the front line of Ukraine and Russia, but he never traveled to Tigray? They never saw anybody in Tigray. And the chairman was seen there eating sausages in a bunker in Ukraine, Kiev. We need an African Union that is working, that can change, so that presidents like the one of Sudan is advised that you cannot just, you cannot fly at the waste of fuel, that you ask a certain country to readmit you to African Union. The problem is not African Union. The problem is you as the general surrender the power and allow civilians to conduct the election. If there is a corrupt civilian or government, that's the chapter. You can't alter it. Kenya cannot alter it. Uganda cannot alter it.
Doc, isn't that military opportunism, even in Sudan?
I know you want to fix me on that one. Those are my friends, the Burhan and the Duglo. They might forget me, but I've been there for them. I stood by them. I told them, the first coup, I warned them. The moment you hand over General Bashir to the ICC, I've told them personally they should be ready to be handed over themselves. In fact, pack your goods like in Norway. Have you seen Medium? Can I interest you as we land in the mics? There's a country in Europe where you go to court, Wanda, they sentence you. All of you, as you listen, they sentence you. Then they ask you, when are you coming to Solomon? When you read the Medium, can you listen to that? Say what? When are you coming to start your sentence? Have you ever seen such a thing on African court? Give an African a chance to leave that court if he doesn't change his face through, what is it called? This thing of changing the face, what is it called, Miriam?
Plastic surgery or what?
Plastic surgery. An African will change the face and call himself Robinson instead of the original name. And you look for him, he will not be found like a needle. But in Norway, they tell you go back and prepare your family very well because the government does not have money to feed your family. Umesikia hiyo Wanda? So if you want to commit a crime kadogo, enda Norway. Unakupatia ka chance. Unarudi nyumbani, unaangalia mama, mnachukua watoto kwa shule, you take the children to school, you carry everything, you prepare school fees, you prepare the money in the bank, then you come back on 10th of February to start your sentence. Haya, haki ya Mungu hapo wonder in one sentence, would you stand that? Will you come back to court? Don't be honest. I'm starting with Wanda and I will come back to Miriam, whether Miriam will come back to court.
I will, in person I will, because I'll be suspending the punishment. I'll only be postponing, so I'll go so that I settle it down.
What about it is death row? Why don't you kill yourself outside there first? Why do you come to be? Why do you come to be squeezed by machines? The machine squeezes your blood out. I can see Miriam is itching to answer this.
No,
yes, Miriam,
death row has been abolished in a lot of these countries that practice democracy, except
life sentence. Yeah. They say. What would you say? Miriam, I'm with you, and I've seen what he said.
Yeah, you just come back. Yeah.
Would you come back?
Yes, and then appeal after the parole. The days that you've been allowed to have parole, then you can appeal.
Miriam, haki ya Mungu, you're a Christian. Don't tell me you appeal. They are going to hammer you 60 years. Life. Will you come back? Yes, let me hear from Daniel.
Yeah, that cannot work in Africa. You know, the moment you are given this opportunity, be looking to towards the nearest border so that just disappear.
You look for the best border to Congo, become Congolese.
Yes. Such a system cannot work in Africa.
Yes. So Miriam says she's one of the special breeds of Africa who will return to face a life sentence of 60 years. Even if you appeal, they might not quash it. They will just reduce it by 20 years and you've served 40. When you are already 40, so when will you come out?
Well, if you commit a crime, then you should be prepared to face the consequences. You can't have your cake and eat it. If you don't want to serve term, don't go against the law. If you go against the law, then if the law catches up with you, you'll have the repercussions. So there's no two ways around it.
Okay. Asante. Let's do this. In a summary, before I come to the takeaway, indeed, there are several African countries, about 14 of them, where political prisoners or politically instigated cases are not available. There are no prisoners of conscience in those countries. The rest, about 24 of them, they are prisoners, 1 or 2 still held or charged or sent to prison for treason. Therefore, all in all, Africa needs to review, to do what we call fatigue evaluation exercise. Are we moving in the right direction? Yes or no? Do we move in the right direction in order to enhance better democracy in Africa? Yes or no? But what is the ultimate goal out of this subject? The subject is, what can we do about other alternative mechanisms? I want us to bring it to that. Alternative mechanisms. What are they? As you wind up, Wanda, just one minute. Don't pass there. What are the alternative mechanisms?
Thank you. The alternative mechanism that I'll propose: make presidency ceremonial, then introduce the executive or an executive that is that represents all quarters of a country. Then let those executive, let that department deal with the development of the nation, but make the presidency ceremonial and a unifying position.
Okay. Thank you very much, Wanda. It's a very good proposal. I don't know whether Miriam likes it. Presidents to be ceremonial.
Well, we have a ceremonial president in Ethiopia. I don't know how that has worked there. I don't know if it has addressed the issue of democracy.
We have a ceremonial president in Ethiopia, but we have a very radical prime minister.
Yes, so I don't know if that is what he's meaning
Does it help Ethiopia at all?
in the democracy.
They have a ceremony, but they forgot the second bit that I'm proposing,
Which is?
having a council or an executive that represents all the regions. For instance, if I use Kenya, I use a national council that represents 47 counties, and that council proposes or handles the development agenda of the 47 counties, but the president becomes ceremonial as a unifying factor that unifies the whole country. Therefore,
So
what Ethiopians are missing...
Who runs the government in the middle?
Now, who runs the government becomes the premier of that council.
Oh, okay. So I think this thing of premier in Waluya is eating them. So you are suggesting the first premier should be your man from Vihiga. Okay, fine. Okay. Let me hear from Wesonga, the other Wesonga.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Dr. Masanga. Actually, I support Wanda's proposal because you realize that the problem in Africa is where we have the a strong presidential system, where the is actually the law upon themselves. So you realize that everyone is fighting to become the president because they know once you are the president, everything in the country revolves around you. But if we can actually reduce the powers of a president to be ceremonial, in that we have other institutions that can actually run the country and be able to bring equality and make sure that the constitution is followed, then no one will actually be spending billions of shillings to become a president. Rather, they will invest in the local representation where they come from, the grassroots leadership. It's some kind of, it works like the devolution is working today. You realize that before devolution, we had counties that had never seen even a 5-story building. But with devolution, you can see now we have counties like Mandera, Wajir, and other northern frontier counties that actually are seeing even, level 5 hospitals for the first time. And I believe if such things were done in such a similar manner in the national level, we wouldn't be having competition of who becomes the president, who becomes the deputy. People will be so much maybe concerned with how much resources are we going to be getting. And if we can have a council like Professor Wanda Wesonga is proposing, then I believe that will be able to really cut down the powers of the president. And most countries that have powerful presidential systems, you realize that they are more likely to end up with totalitarian regimes, or maybe leaders who do not want to cede power, or even in the worst scenario, they have very, very chaotic, political situations in their countries. So I believe that could be the only solution.
Okay, Miriam, just one sentence.
Okay. And,
or 2 or 3.
I was just listening to that proposal by Wanda Wesonga, followed by the other Wesonga. It's quite interesting and quite idealistic. But when you look at the reality in the African political landscape, power equals politics. That's why people run for office, to become powerful. So if you want to have a president who is not a ceremonial, there's somebody below them, the prime minister or the premier. There has to be somebody who wields some level of power. and how we've seen our leaders in this continent, nobody will just agree to. There will be some struggle for power to some certain extent. I think at the expense of the developmental agendas, and I think we've not matured enough to a space where our leaders have an understanding that they're here to serve the public, and so whatever position that the public trusts them with, they're there to serve us. We've not matured to that level. They know I am here because I want power, and once I get this power, then it's all about me and how much I can get from this position. So until we mature to that level of understanding, then we still have a long way to go. The proposals are wonderful, but I think they're quite idealistic, judging from where we are right now, the reality of the African politics.
Okay, thank you very much, lady and gentlemen. There comes a time when we make all your proposals are very clear, are very good. The proposal, as Miriam has put it, is idealistic. I don't know whether it can really work. Can it work? Surely. Can it work with the climate that we see people are hungry? Someone has spent 400 billion shillings or dollars, $4 billion on a campaign. You expect him to be ceremonial? Where you sign on the bills brought by your clerks. That's it, you don't have a say, debate in it. All what you have said here is called political fatigue evaluation. Africa needs a fatigue evaluations exercise of its democracies, democratic institutions. Are they working? Are they not? Are they worth? What are the triggers to our conflicts? The mayhem you have talked about. Why can't democracy even stay? Miriam's opening statement is from 1960, isn't it? The first statement you made from 1960 to date, I still remember it up to here. Africa has had, since the departure of the colonial master, we have had upheavals, ups and downs, democracy, overthrow governments, the military coming in. What is the problem? That is what we were talking about today. And in doing so, we gave examples of very good countries that have actually no political prisoner that you can think he has been detained because of politics. But most of them are detained because of corruption and other cases involving public resources and other crimes that are committed by any state on earth. So on that note, I want to thank you. Let me just take a briefer. Okay, this is the takeaway. From the first country in Africa that took independence, or that got independence in 1957, from the colonial British master, Ghana, we have had several countries that followed later in Africa. The pre- and the post-independence democracy of these African countries have been reshaped. Some have had military coups, some have had successful and successive elections conducted. But one trigger that has created all the problems that we see, which has made it very difficult for in the first half of the 60s, 70s, was the military being very opportunistic. As we have said, and we have said so, the opportunism of militarism, how did it spring? Sprang because of the rivalry, power, money, and revenge. Most of the militaries that have taken power in Africa come into revenge or avenge the death, the killing of their former leader, or the killing of their own or their kin, or the killing of brothers or politicians that they favored. So how long will Africa take? And how long will it take Africa to review, to have a fatigue evaluation exercise that can bring Africa, that can change the modus operandi of our normal status from the normal status to a new dispensation, which can bring about a better Africa. A new dispensation is needed in Africa, is needed in Africa in order to find the equilibrium which is equal to the world order that we seek to call ourselves the global market. If some countries are democratic and others are not, there will be no harmony in our trading. Therefore, Africa is affected with those factors that until there is a complete holistic change approach, and all African countries desist from conducting bad elections, which form a trigger to the coups, form a trigger to the violence, form a trigger to the waste of resources, of which we have mentioned as economic, social, and political spheres that have failed on the continent because of democracy, is when we shall have a better Africa. Until those are done, until a review, a total fatigue evaluation exercise is conducted on the continent of Africa, Africa will remain in the bad books of the West. So many experiences, so many experiments will be done on us. So many things will be earmarked for Africa. Lots of summits will be called for Africa. But if we don't change the behavior of our democratic roots, like China changed to a communist state, to a semi-communist state, but with a mixture of a hybrid capitalism. Today, China lends money to the whole world. Are we going to do what other countries have done if we are to sustain democracy? Therefore, the journey of democracy in Africa has been a tough journey. Have we achieved democratic reforms? Yes, to some extent. Some countries like 12 to 13 are democratic. The rest are semi-democratic, and the very few are not democratic at all, completely. You can Google them, you can find which country is yours and which country is not yours. And therefore, thank you very much for listening to us. That is the video takeaway for you. Enjoy it and ask questions. Always follow us on YouTube. Subscribe on YouTube. Press that button, subscribe. When you subscribe, you increase our numbers. And I will continue to say, we are still here. Thank you very much. God bless you. Africa can never have a pure democratic institutions because we are still very far from them. We don't know the difference between elections and democracy. Thank you. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Lady and gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for the tenacity and the steadfastness that you have been on this platform, including the opportunistic approach, a word that was brought by my dear heart, our sister at law. Sister at law, is it? not in law, at law. I have given you a new term. You are now called sister at law because you are not in the law. Isn't it wonder, sister-in-law, and all of you, Daniel Wesonga, wherever you are hiding to today, either you have been left on babysitting apparatus that you wouldn't like us to see the crunches. Wesonga, are you on babysitting, man? Daniel Wesonga. Thank you very much, Daniel. You have gone silent. Are you babysitting today? You are very proud guy who always comes on the chip. Otherwise, Ellipse Wonder, thank you very much, sir. At least for us at the Miriam, we have shown our faces. But Mr. Wesonga Daniel is doing, today is not a working day. It is a house working. I've been there, Daniel, and I know how life works when you are in the hands of the home. Thank you very much. God bless you. This Africa and this station is for us, Africa. With us, Africa. By us, Africa. Ciao.
Rivers do not drink their own water. Trees do not eat their own fruit. The sun does not shine on itself, and flowers do not spread their fragrance for themselves. Living for others is a rule of nature. We are all born to help each other. No matter how difficult it is, life is good when you are happy, but much better when others are happy because of you.